Have you ever found yourself jolted awake at 3 in the morning, utterly convinced that it must be almost sunrise, only to glance at the clock and feel a wave of frustration wash over you? It's a curious situation that many older adults experience, yet few truly understand why it happens. Even more intriguing is how this seemingly harmless habit of waking up in the dead of night can shine a light on deeper patterns and changes unfolding in your life. It's not just a quirk of getting older, and it's certainly not an indicator that you're losing it. Instead, these early morning awakenings could be delivering important messages about your body, your mind, and even your environment. Over the next several sections, we'll dig into the surprising forces that might be nudging you out of a sound slumber at exactly 3 in the morning. We'll look at shifts in hormones, lifestyle habits you might not even think twice about, and physical or emotional reasons that could be echoing more loudly in your later years. We'll also explore the role of social connection, something most people don't realize can play a part in how and when you sleep. By the end, you'll have a deeper, richer perspective on what's happening within you and around you. And more importantly, you'll walk away with practical ways to adjust, adapt, and embrace these changes in a manner that respects both your need for rest and the wisdom of your experience. Don't be surprised if a few of these insights genuinely shock you. Some explanations might reveal how deeply biology and behavior intertwine in ways you hadn't previously considered. Others could open your eyes to the emotional undercurrents that quietly swirl during the stillness of the night. Whether you find yourself restless from physical discomfort or because unspoken thoughts are finally having their say, this journey is designed to empower you. By understanding the root causes of those 3 a.m. wake-ups, you can transform frustration into insight, turning a random interruption into a meaningful invitation to care for yourself more intentionally. So let's begin. Think of this exploration as sitting down in a cozy living room, chatting with a trusted friend about a mystery you've been trying to solve for quite some time. We'll start by examining one of the most fundamental pieces of this puzzle, the potent but often overlooked shifts in hormones and biology that emerge as we age. It's no secret that the human body is a marvel of chemistry and rhythm. Throughout our lives, a wide range of hormones ebb and flow, orchestrating everything from when we feel hungry to when we feel sleepy. One hormone in particular, melatonin, is central to the question of why so many older adults find themselves awake around 3 in the morning. Often dubbed the sleep hormone, melatonin helps set and maintain what we know as the circadian rhythm, your body's internal clock that guides sleep-wake cycles. In younger years, melatonin production tends to follow a strong, predictable pattern. As evening approaches, levels begin to rise, telling your brain it's time to power down. During deep sleep, the body remains in a state of hormonal balance, allowing you to rest well into the early morning. However, as you get older, melatonin production often decreases or shifts in its timing. The result, you might still fall asleep at your usual bedtime, or perhaps even earlier, but your body isn't producing enough melatonin through the latter part of the night to keep you soundly asleep. This isn't necessarily a problem in the sense that something is broken. Rather, it's a natural evolution of your biology, an adaptation that comes with age. Yet, it can feel frustrating. Imagine quietly resting in a dark room, only to find yourself wide awake at 3 in the morning. It's easy to assume you've done something wrong, eaten too late, worried too much, or simply lost the ability to sleep like you used to. But often, it's none of these things. It could simply be that your body, in its changing wisdom, doesn't produce or maintain the same levels of melatonin it once did. Adding to this challenge is how light affects melatonin. As you age, you may become more sensitive to even faint sources of illumination. The glow of a street lamp through the curtains, the standby light on your television, or the tiny beam from a digital clock can suppress melatonin production even further. In essence, your body is telling you it's time to be awake, even when your logical mind knows it's the middle of the night. Consider the experience of Rita, a 70-year-old retiree who prided herself on being a solid sleeper throughout her life. When she began waking up at nearly the same time every night, around 3 a.m., she felt baffled. No amount of tossing, turning, or self-blame helped her return to sleep. Then she learned about melatonin and the body's sensitivity to light. With a few simple tweaks, darker curtains, removing digital lights from the bedroom, and avoiding bright screens an hour before bedtime, Rita noticed a positive change. She didn't eliminate her 3 a.m. wake-ups entirely, but they became less frequent and less frustrating once she knew what was happening. Beyond melatonin, other hormones can also play a role. Cortisol, known as the body's stress hormone, might spike in the early morning hours, partially due to aging adrenal glands and partially due to everyday stress. If you're already low on melatonin, even a small bump in cortisol can tip the scales toward wakefulness. It's as if the body is gently pressing the accelerator when it should still be idling in park. You may not be feeling overtly stressed, but the physiology of aging sometimes amplifies these internal shifts. The important takeaway: recognize that waking up at 3 in the morning doesn't automatically mean you're anxious or that you have insomnia. It could be a quiet reflection of your shifting internal chemistry. Rather than beating yourself up, consider how you can support your body's evolving needs. That might include limiting bright screens before bed, adding a small evening walk to align your circadian rhythm with natural light, or even discussing melatonin supplements with a healthcare provider. When you treat these shifts as normal parts of aging rather than catastrophes, you free yourself to explore solutions from a place of acceptance and curiosity. Remember that this isn't the full story. Hormonal shifts are crucial, but they're just one piece of the puzzle. Next, we'll look at how your circadian rhythm itself can be reset or advanced over time, pulling your bedtime and your waking moments forward without you even realizing it. Have you ever noticed that you're feeling sleepy much earlier in the evening than you did 10, 20, or 30 years ago? You might settle in for the night at 8 o'clock, thinking you'll just watch a show or read a chapter of a book, only to catch yourself dozing off. It's a pattern many older adults share, and it points to what sleep researchers call advanced sleep phase. In simple terms, advanced sleep phase means your internal clock starts its wind-down process earlier in the day than it used to. This could manifest as finding yourself exhausted shortly after sunset, or even taking a nap you never intended to take. The flip side, of course, is that you've already logged several hours of sleep by the time 3 a.m. rolls around. When your body's had enough rest, it naturally decides, time to get up. One of the curious things about this phenomenon is that it's not merely a reaction to boredom, retirement, or the absence of a rigid schedule, though those factors can exacerbate it. Instead, it can have a genuine biological basis tied to changes in your brain's suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN. That's a fancy term for the region of the brain that regulates circadian rhythms. Over time, your SCN may become less responsive to external cues like light, or it may send signals that it's time to power down much sooner in the evening than it did when you were younger. Take Nelson, for example, a 67-year-old artist who spent most of his life pulling late-night creative sessions. When he entered his 60s, he gradually found himself losing steam earlier in the evening. It became standard for him to conk out by 9 p.m. naturally. He then started waking up in the wee hours with a jolt of energy. Initially, he felt frustrated, believing it was some form of insomnia. After learning about advanced sleep phase, he realized his body was simply shifting its entire cycle. Rather than fighting it, he adjusted his artistic practice to late afternoon and early evening, allowing himself to go to bed at 9 p.m. guilt-free. That change aligned his passion with his new internal schedule, reducing his stress about inconsistent sleeping patterns. There's also a social dimension here. In younger years, obligations like children's schedules, work commutes, and social gatherings naturally push your bedtime later. But as you get older, especially if you're retired, fewer external demands might be shaping your schedule. This can accelerate advanced sleep phase because there's little incentive to stay awake once your body signals fatigue. Consequently, your bedtime creeps up and your wake time follows suit. And here's an important psychological twist. If you wake up at 3 a.m. and believe you're doing something wrong, you might start feeling anxious. That anxiety itself can make it tougher to drift back to sleep. It becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. You stress about waking up too early, which triggers cortisol, which makes you more alert, which keeps you awake even longer. Eventually, you might associate 3 a.m. with frustration, turning that hour into a mental battleground rather than a time of peaceful rest. Yet, once you understand the concept of advanced sleep phase, you have tools to handle these early wake-ups more gracefully. Maybe you accept that your bedtime is earlier, so you also accept that your morning starts earlier, leaving you time for a peaceful dawn routine. Or perhaps you gently nudge your bedtime a bit later by exposing yourself to more evening light, engaging in mild physical activity around dinner time, and avoiding naps too late in the day. There's no one-size-fits-all approach, but awareness is the first step. When you realize your body's clock might be ticking a little faster or a little earlier, it removes the mystery. Suddenly, 3 a.m. isn't a bizarre hour. It's just part of your new normal, one that can be managed with intention and understanding. With that said, hormones and circadian shifts only scratch the surface. We also need to consider the physical discomforts and medical factors that often accompany aging. These play an equally important role in pulling older adults out of sleep well before dawn. It's 3 in the morning. You stir, shift positions, and realize there's an ache in your lower back that wasn't there a few hours ago. Or you feel the pressing need to use the bathroom, even though you went right before bed. Or maybe your legs are cramping in a way they never used to. These quiet physical signals often ramp up with age, making the wee hours of the night more vulnerable to restlessness. Chronic pain conditions, such as arthritis, tend to flare after long periods of inactivity. During deep sleep, you might not notice discomfort, but as you transition into lighter stages of sleep around the early morning hours, that ache becomes the squeaky will demanding attention. It's not necessarily excruciating. It can be subtle, yet potent enough to nudge you fully awake. Once your eyes open, it's far easier for other concerns to bubble up. The temperature in the room, a dry throat, or the slightest noise from the street outside. Suddenly, you're alert, and getting back to sleep isn't so simple. For those dealing with acid reflux or gastrointestinal sensitivities, lying flat for several hours can cause stomach acid to creep up the esophagus, leading to a burning sensation. While younger adults may also face reflux, older adults often experience less muscle tone in the esophageal sphincter, making reflux more frequent or intense. That twinge of acid can jolt you awake. Add in the possibility of late dinners, certain medications, or even an evening snack that doesn't sit well, and it's a recipe for unwanted nighttime awakenings. Then there's the very common issue of nocturia, or the need to urinate frequently at night. As we age, the bladder can hold less urine and the muscles that control it can weaken. Couple that with certain medications, like diuretics for high blood pressure, and you've got a scenario where a 3 a.m. bathroom trip becomes almost inevitable. And if you're someone whose mind starts racing the moment your feet touch the floor, that trip can easily turn into a prolonged period of wakefulness. Let's consider Herb, a 74-year-old who'd always prided himself on sleeping through the night. A couple of years ago, he noticed he'd wake up at 2:30 or 3 a.m. with an annoying pressure in his knees. At first, he'd just blame his mattress. Then he realized it was actually mild arthritis acting up. By working with a physical therapist and doing gentle stretches before bed, he managed to reduce the discomfort, which in turn made it easier for him to sleep until sunrise. The solution didn't eliminate his arthritis entirely. It simply acknowledged that his body needed a new approach to nighttime comfort. Some older adults also grapple with sleep apnea, though it can go undiagnosed for years. Brief interruptions in breathing might cause micro-awakenings throughout the night, creating fragmented sleep. Sometimes, these mini-awakenings become a full-blown alertness around 3 a.m., leaving you wide-eyed and wondering why you feel so restless. Though a sleep study might be needed to confirm sleep apnea, recognizing the possibility is a big step toward getting proper treatment. All these scenarios underscore a crucial point. Nighttime wake-ups can be more than just random annoyances. They can be your body's way of sending a signal, an invitation to pay closer attention to pain management, medication timing, or even your bedtime environment. By addressing these physical triggers, you don't just improve your sleep, you also enhance your overall comfort and quality of life. And if you're waking up regularly due to pain or other medical factors, it might be worth discussing it openly with your healthcare provider. Small tweaks, whether it's a new pillow, a pre-bedtime routine, or adjusting medication schedules, can yield significant improvements. But physical factors aren't the only culprits. Sometimes you can't drift back to sleep because your emotional landscape is more unsettled than you realize. Next, we'll dive into how the quiet hours of early morning can serve as a magnifying glass for the inner workings of the mind. When the world goes quiet in the early morning, the mind can grow louder. If you've ever found yourself awake at 3 a.m. and suddenly recalling a conversation you had decades ago, or worrying about something that seemed trivial during the day, this is a prime example of how emotional undercurrents rise to the surface during the hustle and bustle of daylight hours. Those thoughts might have been drowned out by chores, social interactions, or even television, but in the stillness of the night, they have room to breathe. It's a surprising twist for some older adults who say, "I didn't used to worry like this when I was younger." True, but consider what your younger years were like. Busy schedules, raising children, career pressures, social events. Constant motion can push unresolved feelings or latent worries into the background. When life slows down, those unprocessed emotions have a chance to emerge, and the quiet hours of early morning are perfect for them to make their presence known. Loneliness is one such emotion that can sneak in unannounced. Even if you have a loving family and a comfortable home, the late night stillness can amplify any underlying sense of isolation. Children may have moved away. Longtime friends might be harder to reach. A spouse or partner may have passed on, leaving behind a void in the household that wasn't there before. During the day, you might feel fine, but at 3 in the morning, the difference between a bustling past and a quieter present can suddenly feel stark. Another layer to consider is regret or nostalgia. As you accumulate more life experiences, both joyful and painful, you also gather reflections on what could have been done differently. Perhaps there were paths not taken, apologies never voiced, or opportunities missed. While these reflections can be meaningful and can lead to personal growth, they can also feel heavy when they surface at a time meant for rest. Marianne, 78, found herself wrestling with memories of her first marriage, which ended decades ago. She rarely thought about it during the day, but after her second husband died, she noticed a pattern. She'd wake up at around 3 a.m. feeling unsettled, her thoughts drifting to past mistakes and unresolved conversations. At first, Marianne assumed something must be wrong with her physically, but when tests showed no significant medical issues, she looked deeper into her emotional life. By journaling a few sentences before bed and reconnecting with an old friend to talk about these memories, she found her nighttime restlessness began to ease. Marianne's story illustrates how acknowledging and tending to emotional undercurrents can bring relief and more peaceful sleep. It's also crucial to note that stress isn't limited to big, catastrophic life events. It can stem from smaller worries, budgeting on a fixed income, concerns about personal health, or even tension with neighbors or family members. In younger years, adrenaline and higher cortisol levels might power you through minor stresses without losing much sleep. But as you get older, the body's stress responses can change. A mild concern can loom larger in the absence of daytime distractions. So what can you do if emotional restlessness is nudging you awake? First, recognize that these awakenings can be signals that something inside you wants attention. It might be helpful to keep a notepad by the bed. If you wake up with your mind swirling, jot down keywords or phrases about what's on your mind. This simple act can help externalize the worry, making it feel less overwhelming. Some people find solace in brief meditations or calming music to recenter themselves. Others benefit from talking to a counselor or therapist, especially if past traumas or significant emotional issues keep resurfacing. Remember, waking up at 3 a.m. to an onslaught of thoughts doesn't mean you're doomed to endless sleepless nights. It can be an invitation to explore the depth of your emotional life. By facing these feelings directly, you often reduce their power to disturb your rest. And once you address the mind's quiet murmurings, you might be surprised how much more soundly you sleep. Still, emotions aren't the only subtle influencer. A cluster of lifestyle habits, some you might consider harmless, can also push your internal clock to ring the alarm hours before sunrise. Let's explore those next. Picture this. You spend your day in relative tranquility, maybe reading or puttering around the house. You have dinner around 5 p.m., watch a bit of television, and then notice you're nodding off by 8:30 or 9 o'clock. It feels innocent enough, even pleasant, to turn in early and get some rest. But if you've gone to bed that soon, you've already accumulated several hours of sleep by the time 3 a.m. rolls around, putting you at a prime wake-up zone. Retirement or a more relaxed daily schedule can accelerate this shift. In your working years, you might have been exposed to more natural daylight and physical movement, commuting, running errands, interacting with colleagues. You also had evening obligations that kept you up later. Now, with fewer external time cues, it's easier for your body to drift into an earlier bedtime. This early bedtime may feel perfectly logical at the moment. After all, you're tired, but it also sets the stage for those early awakenings. Napping is another lifestyle factor that can interfere with nighttime sleep. Short naps can be refreshing, but longer or late afternoon naps can confuse the body's internal clock. If you're catching a 2-hour snooze at 4 p.m., your body might decide you don't need a full 8 hours at night anymore. Come 3 a.m., it thinks you're ready to rumble. Napping isn't inherently bad. The key is timing and duration. A quick 20 to 30-minute cat nap after lunch may be helpful, but dozing off too close to bedtime could disrupt your overnight pattern more than you realize. Your eating habits also play a role. Having dinner too early or not having a small snack before bed can lead to a dip in blood sugar during the night, causing a subtle jolt to your system that might wake you. Alternatively, a heavy meal or spicy food eaten too late can trigger indigestion or reflux, which also disrupts sleep. Striking a balance between not going to bed hungry and avoiding overly heavy or late meals is a delicate dance, but it can make a huge difference in how well you rest. Don't forget caffeine and alcohol. As we get older, our metabolism for these substances changes. Even if you used to enjoy a cup of coffee after dinner without any issues, you might find it now lingers in your system longer than before. That caffeine can subtly keep you in lighter stages of sleep, making any small disturbance enough to wake you. Alcohol, though it might initially make you feel sleepy, can cause sleep fragmentation once it wears off. If you find yourself wide awake at odd hours, consider re-examining your beverage intake during the latter part of the day. For a practical example, look at Alma, a 71-year-old who noticed she was falling asleep almost every evening in front of the TV, often before 8 p.m. She'd then shuffle to bed and wonder why she popped awake at around 2:30 or 3 a.m., ready to get on with her day. After talking with her daughter, Alma shifted her routine. She started taking a brief walk after dinner and aimed to keep herself engaged, maybe a phone call or a puzzle, until at least 9:30 p.m. This small shift meant she was more apt to sleep continuously until at least 5 o'clock or 6 a.m., a change that vastly improved her energy levels during daytime hours. One other subtle factor is lighting in your home during the evening. If your lighting is very dim early on, your body might produce melatonin sooner, nudging you to sleep prematurely. Conversely, if you keep bright, artificial lights on too late, it can delay melatonin production, leading to a later bedtime and potential mismatch with your natural rhythms. Striking the right balance, using moderate lighting in the early evening, then softening it as bedtime nears, can support a healthier sleep schedule. Of course, none of these lifestyle changes exist in a vacuum. They interplay with your hormones, emotional state, and physical comfort, forming a complex web of causes and effects. Sometimes addressing one aspect, like controlling napping, improves sleep so much that you're less bothered by other factors. In other cases, you might find you need a multi-pronged approach, adjusting bedtime, meal timing, and evening activities all at once. That said, even if you optimize hormones, emotional well-being, and lifestyle habits, there may still be external environmental factors that sabotage your best efforts. In the next section, we'll dig deeper into how lighting, sound, temperature, and other aspects of your surroundings can stand between you and a full night's rest. No matter how balanced your internal rhythms might be, your sleep can still be disturbed by what's happening around you. As people age, they often become more sensitive to noise, whether that's the subtle hum of a refrigerator, the rumble of a passing car, or a neighbor's dog barking. In younger years, you might have slept through thunderstorms without flinching, but now a mere creak in the hallway might rouse you. Temperature also plays a pivotal pivotal role. Older adults sometimes have a reduced ability to regulate body temperature, meaning you might feel chilly while your environment is actually warm, or vice versa. If your blanket is too heavy or your room becomes too hot overnight, your body might wake up seeking relief. On the flip side, if you're someone who feels constantly cold, that icy tinge in the wee hours can interrupt deep sleep. Even the smallest slivers of light pollution, a street lamp that leaks through the curtains, a night light in the hallway, or the tiny LEDs on electronic devices, can trick your brain into thinking morning is near. While this might not fully wake younger individuals, older adults with lighter, more fragmented sleep can find that any hint of light short-circuits their melatonin production and stirs them from slumber. Let's look at Barry, a 69-year-old who found himself regularly awake by 3 a.m. He was convinced stress was the issue until his granddaughter pointed out how bright the streetlights outside his windows were. Barry switched to blackout curtains and also turned his digital alarm clock away from his face at night, so its glow wouldn't shine directly at him. He was amazed at how this simple environmental tweak helped him stay asleep another hour or two. It didn't solve every problem. He still had to manage his early bedtime and occasional restless thoughts, but it illustrated how sensitive older adults can be to small changes in their surroundings. On top of noise and light, air quality can also matter more than you'd expect. Dry air might cause a scratchy throat or nasal passages, nudging you awake when your mouth feels parched. If you're in a dusty environment or have a pet that sheds, allergies can intensify at night. And if you've been using the same pillows and mattress for many years, they might hold allergens that disrupt your breathing, leading to those mini awakenings that accumulate and ultimately have you throwing off the covers in the middle of the night. Finally, let's talk about familiarity. As you age, it's normal to become more reliant on comfortable routines. This applies to your sleep environment too. A significant change, like rearranging the bedroom or moving furniture, can throw your sense of security off kilter, making you more prone to restlessness. The same goes for sleeping in a new location, such as visiting relatives or traveling. In those unfamiliar settings, every small sound or difference can magnify, startling you awake more easily. By taking an honest inventory of your bedroom, considering noise, temperature, lighting, and overall comfort, you may uncover obstacles to better sleep that have nothing to do with hormones or emotional stress. Sometimes investing in earplugs, a white noise machine, a fan, or heavier curtains can make a world of difference. And if dryness is an issue, a small humidifier could be the key to keeping your throat and nose comfortable through the night. With the environment addressed, we shift to another factor that many people neglect to consider: the influence of social connection, or the lack thereof, on sleep. Often, your social world can shape your daily routine, your emotional well-being, and even how your body perceives rest. Humans are social creatures. This remains true no matter how many birthdays we've celebrated. While you might think sleep is a strictly individual affair, the reality is that our social environments powerfully influence how and when we rest. In your younger years, you might have had roommates, a spouse, kids, or a busy household routine that unintentionally regulated your bedtime. Family meals, children's bedtimes, or a spouse's work schedule acted as strong external cues for when it was time to wind down. As you get older, these external cues may weaken. Children move out or move far away. Spouses or close friends may no longer share your schedule, or you might find yourself living alone for the first time in decades. Without those shared routines, your internal clock can drift, sometimes becoming earlier and earlier. This shift can feed into the advanced sleep phase we discussed, making you more susceptible to those 3 a.m. wake-ups. Moreover, having fewer social interactions during the day can impact your emotional state at night. If you're feeling isolated, it can subtly manifest as restlessness. You might not consciously connect those feelings to your sleep, but your body can sense the change in social engagement. Think of social activities as mental and emotional exercise. Without enough exercise, your mind might wander more intensely at night, stirring up anxieties or a sense of loneliness. Another surprising aspect is peer pressure and accountability. When you lived with others, you might have stayed up later to chat or share in an activity, keeping a more consistent bedtime. If your spouse or friend was a night owl, maybe you adapted to that schedule. Conversely, maybe you had to wake up early to drive the kids to school. In any case, your routine was partly shaped by the people around you. Once those social dynamics fall away, it's easier to retire to bed whenever you feel even the slightest twinge of fatigue, which can mean turning in far too early and waking up in the dark hours of the morning. Consider Lenora, 73, who lived with her husband until he passed away. Suddenly, her evenings stretched out in front of her with no one to talk to and no need to coordinate bedtimes. She started heading to bed at 8 p.m. out of sheer boredom and sadness. It was no surprise that by 3 a.m. she found herself wide awake, grappling with memories and a faint sense of emptiness. After speaking with a grief counselor, Lenora began scheduling phone calls with a close friend at 8:30 p.m. a couple of nights a week, along with a local seniors game night on Fridays. These small shifts gave her a gentle reason to stay awake later, gradually moving her bedtime closer to 10 p.m. She still occasionally awakens early, but the frequency and emotional weight of those awakenings have decreased significantly. So how can you harness the power of social connection to improve your sleep? It might be as simple as planning a regular phone call in the evening or joining a community group that meets around dinner time. Even engaging in a little online video chat with a friend or family member can mimic the sense of shared evening activity. Sharing your sleep struggles with a trusted friend can also help you feel less alone, and they might offer perspectives or advice you hadn't considered. At its core, sleep is part of the tapestry of your life, woven in with relationships, habits, and health. We've explored hormones, biological rhythms, physical discomfort, emotional factors, lifestyle choices, the environment, and now social connection. With these pieces in place, it's time to draw the threads together in a way that paints a clearer, more holistic picture. Let's move into the final section, where we'll wrap up these ideas and offer a concluding reflection on how to navigate and even embrace your body's nighttime signals. When older adults wake at 3 in the morning, it can feel like a puzzle with missing pieces, or worse, a sign that something has gone terribly wrong. But as we've uncovered throughout this exploration, there's far more to these early wake-ups than meets the eye. Your body is an intricate system of hormones, circulating rhythms, physical needs, emotional undercurrents, lifestyle habits, environmental influences, and social connections. Each factor exerts a subtle pull on your sleep-wake cycle. Sometimes the interplay is gentle. Other times it can jolt you awake at an hour that doesn't feel natural. Yet knowledge is a powerful ally. Understanding why you're waking at 3 a.m. removes the stigma and self-blame. Instead of seeing yourself as unable to sleep, you can see yourself as responding to your body's changing rhythms or to cues in your environment that you can modify. Awareness opens the door to practical changes, whether that's adjusting your bedtime, darkening your room, talking through emotional concerns, or seeking new social engagements to structure your evenings. Above all, remember that these nighttime awakenings aren't necessarily a failing. In fact, they can be seen as signals, messages from your body and mind. Some messages might say, I need more comfort, or I need to process these memories, or I'm ready to start the day earlier than I used to. By listening with compassion, you can address the root causes, making small shifts that lead to big improvements in how you feel both at night and during the day. Perhaps you'll discover you need to fine-tune your sleep schedule, pushing bedtime a bit later to align with your desired wake-up time. Maybe you'll realize your bedroom environment calls for an overhaul, new curtains, a different pillow, or a slight temperature adjustment. Or it could be that emotional or social factors are quietly nudging you awake, in which case journaling, counseling, or reaching out to a friend might become part of your nighttime toolkit. Embrace these discoveries with the same grace and adaptability that have carried you through life so far. Each stage of aging comes with its own lessons, and your sleep patterns are no exception. By honoring these insights, you're not just chasing a better night's sleep, you're also deepening your relationship with yourself, acknowledging the complexity of your inner world, and practicing self-care in a profound, personal way. If you've read this far, you've taken a step toward demystifying one of the more perplexing phenomena of later life. Don't keep your insights to yourself. Share them with friends, family, or anyone else who might wake up wondering why they're staring at the clock in the quiet darkness. Each conversation has the potential to foster a little more understanding and a little less worry. Thank you for spending your time on this journey. We've navigated hormones, circadian rhythms, physical discomfort, emotional restlessness, lifestyle habits, environmental triggers, and the influence of social connections. May this newfound clarity help you greet your nights with a gentler spirit, and may your mornings come at a pace that honors both your well-earned wisdom and your ongoing curiosity about the life you're still unfolding.